Now I can choose Italy.
I think online competitions are a great thing because during this pandemic, now that we don't get to go to these competitions and compete, I think we'll have to have that spark going, right? To practice and to prove ourselves. I will see how far I can go. I would like to keep going. I wouldn't like to stop pursuing this sport.
Hi guys, welcome to Twisting with Cubers season 2, and today it's one of my favorite cubers since I started, and he was there when I was starting out and he's still there. He's one of the best in India and the world. So Bhargav, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
And I want to start with a big congratulations on getting married, and the whole cubing community wishes you a very happy married life.
Thank you so much. I wanted to keep it a
And,
secret, but then
and
I thought, okay, I'll let JJ and Nitesh know, and now the entire world knows.
I think they already know. And I just want to start from there. So, what is your wife's opinion about your cubing?
Good question. Let's edit this part.
I hope you're not serious because I'm really curious and I
So she was my junior in college. So she knew that I was a cuber and I'd gone to these competitions. She didn't know much about it. But later she got to know that, I practice so many hours a day and I put in so much effort into this. So after we got married also, I think I've continued the same regime ever since I started cubing. 1 hour or half an hour of cubing every day. So it'll be, constant every single day. So I think she's kind of used to it now. So she also very recently learned how to solve the Rubik's Cube. So it's good. I'm planning to
okay.
take her to other competitions also. That way
Oh,
that way even I can travel abroad without having that guilt.
and maybe when on a live competition we can do like a duo podcast, and I think that would be very
Oh
cool.
God. Yes,
to know
sure,
to know your
definitely.
story from her perspective and your cubing, especially your cubing career.
She wanted to be listening to this entire thing going on, but I asked her not to because she would she
Then
would
you will
pass comments in between.
and then you will not have that luxury to edit out. Now you can say
Exactly.
and
Now I
when
can
did
speak whatever I want.
but we'll make you speak something that we want her to listen. We'll make sure that recording reaches her.
I think I can trust JJ on this. He's definitely not going to edit that part out.
Awesome. And when did you started? Like, how was the initial days of your cubing career?
So I had started in 2010 during April. After my 12th exams, I had been to Bangalore to my cousin's place, and he taught me how to solve the Rubik's Cube. And he also gave me the Fun School cube that he had as a spare. So I came back home and started practicing. He sent me a few YouTube videos on how to finger trick and all that. Very, very basic.
Mhm.
So I learned from that and then I started practicing. It had been almost 6, 7 months, and he sent me F12 videos, which is the more advanced version of this, right? So I learned F12s also, and by the end of first year of my cubing career, I'd still not attended any competitions then. So towards the end of that, there was some cultural fest going on, and they had an event, 60 seconds to fame. So basically, you have to do something to impress the judges in 60 seconds. And I I was also in another competition there in the same cultural fest, and I lost that. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll try this out. And my perspective that time was that I was the fastest cuber known because I had beaten the person who taught me. So a cousin who taught me, he averaged around 30 seconds and I was averaging around 25. So I thought maybe I'm the fastest in the world. I just have to do it somewhere live. The media is going to recognize me and then I'm going to get
And the
some
world
Guinness
will,
World Record or
and,
something.
and the world will know.
Yeah, the world will know and I'll be instantly famous. So I went on stage, and then what happened was I was about to, finish my solve in 20 seconds, 22 seconds. And then I realized I had 40 more seconds to while, and it wouldn't look that impressive if I finished in 20. So I thought, okay, I will, hold up 4 or 5 moves towards the end. So I was just looking around the cube and then trying to figure out something. And then towards the end, they said last 5 seconds, I finished the last 4 moves. And then everyone was impressed, and I won the event also. So during the prize distribution ceremony, there was one senior in the same college. He was giving away the prize, and he said he has a friend who has competed in the official competitions and is much faster officially. So he said he has solved it in 18 seconds. My friend has solved it in 18 seconds. He has competed in this world level event. You should go meet him. So then I got to know about him, and then I got to know about World Cube Association and the competitions that are organized by them. And then I knew that I had to compete somewhere. So 4 months later in August, there was my first competition.
And before I ask you about your first competition, I also attended the 60 Seconds to Fame in my college, and so what I did was like I put a 3x3, a 2x2, a pyramids, and an OH, and one more 3x3, and they were just blown away, and they're like, what the? And first of all, they thought this is not really talent. The one of the judge thought that this is not really talent, and the one of the organizer by himself, he asked him to like even try to solve one layer, and he was like, okay, he won.
So that is why I asked all the judges to scramble the cube for me. I knew this would come up sometime.
I mean that was really funny, because I thought, okay, if you don't think so it's a talent, then the organizer like to try it. Like he was a professor and like shocked, and he's like, okay, he won. And coming back to your how was your experience of the first competition, like the official one?
So this was also organized by Fun School, a landmark. So there was a landmark event that used to happen in each and every single city. It had happened in Chennai. I mean, this first cultural fest that I spoke about, that happened in February, and then there was another event in May that happened, but it was an unofficial event organized by Fun School and Landmark. I competed in that in Chennai, and I came first. So the person who was officially the fastest according to that senior, he had also come to that event, and he solved it in around 29 seconds. I solved it in around 26-27. So I beat him in that event. And then I got to know about the other people who had already competed, who had come there for the competition. So then I had more network. My network was still building. And then 3-4 months later in August, there was an official event organized by Fun School and Landmark in Bangalore. So I went to that event. Since I had already known, what kind of setup Fun School and Landmark have in all these competitions, I kind of got to know. And it is going to be like this. This is going to be the pressure, and these many people are going to be watching. But this was even worse because it happened in a mall, Forum Mall. In Bangalore. So there were 7 stories of people watching me from the top. So I was very nervous as usual. And then that was my first competition. I stood 5th. And I met the organizer of a very famous event. Shastra was one of the very famous cubing competitions that used to happen back then. So back then it used to be organized by IITs, NITs. No other event actually had the rights to do it. So they had to call the delegate well in advance, show the delegate that the room was set up, all the timers were bought. So they had to show a lot of evidences, and only then the competition gets approved. And IIT Madras was known for this, and I'd met the organizer of IIT Madras cubing event there in Bangalore. So I was just fortunate to meet the right people at the right time. So I met this organizer, and he spoke with me, and he said, there is a competition that is going to be up on WCA. I think you should attend it because So he came 6th, I came 5th. So he said you should attend it. So I went to that event, and there I came first, and I also broke the national record for FMC. I didn't know what FMC was, but so I just wrote a solution, simple solution, and then came out, and then people were asking me how many moves did it take. So I said 38, I don't know. So they said 42 is the current national record. You beat the national record. So then I started getting interested in this event, and there were other people also who inspired me there. My first one-handed inspiration was from that event only, my second ever competition.
So basically,
was this answer too long?
No. So basically, you ran somebody introduced you to somebody, and then you went to a competition, and you innocently broke a national record. And
I think I'm pretty sure it's much harder now.
What motivated you to pursue it so seriously?
So that time I was still practicing. After my first competition, I realized that this is much bigger than I imagined, and there are other events also. So I went to the Shastra website and there I had registered. I found the other events. So then I started practicing the other events as well. One-handed I picked up, and in 2 weeks I started practicing. That time, predominantly there were only two finger tricks. One where you turn your R prime moves with your index finger like this, and the other one is the Japanese finger trick where you use your pinky like
Pinky.
this for R prime.
Yeah.
Huh. So this Japanese finger trick was not very popular. Only the top tier, cubers were still using it. The other people were still sticking to their index finger. If I remember correctly, Felix was just switching to Japanese. So there are very, very few people who were picking up the Japanese finger tricks. I thought maybe I should, from the start only, I should pick up the Japanese finger tricks and use it. So I picked it up, and in 2 weeks I came to around 35-36 seconds, and in that event I met a person who was solving it very, very fast, but with the American finger tricks, with the Western finger tricks, the index finger R prime. So the previous national record single was 25 and average was 28. So he came to the event and he used a Diansheng cube, which is the 120 rupees cube we get everywhere in all these local stores. So he used that to break the national record. So he got a 22 single, 25 average with a garbage cube, basically. And then I was very impressed. His name was Jishnu. I was very, very impressed. I thought, okay, this is something very cool. I need to pick this up and start practicing. And I also had some injury on my right hand. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll pick this up. So I was also playing cricket that time, second division cricket. And I had a lot of injuries. So I thought maybe this is a good time for me to quit cricket and pursue this seriously. I started practicing one-handed, and in 3 months there was an event in Kerala, his hometown. The person who broke the national record, his hometown, there was an event. I went there, he broke the national record. I sat right next to him and I broke it again. So then the one-handed journey began.
And you solve with your left hand, is that correct?
Yes. So that is something I think I picked up right from the first time. So right-handers were supposed to pick and solve with their left hand, and left-handers were supposed to pick and use their right hand. And this is something I had read up somewhere on the forum or somewhere on Facebook, and I thought, okay, maybe I'll start with my left hand. So the problem with starting with your right hand is that majority of your algs that you use for your two-handed solves,
Exactly.
they will be very useful. But if you are using your right-handed, you'll have to mirror every single one of them and then use it, or else it's not very fast.
And do you try like maybe in the initial phases or now like also solve with your right hand?
Yeah, I just try to do that to while away time, but apart from that, no, not much. I'm not very ambidextrous.
Is it easy for you to participate in an OH event, or you feel a burden to maintain that position of being the best?
So it's very different. For me, I don't feel much pressure with the other events. But whenever it comes to one-handed, I always try to beat my previous record, whatever record I've beaten before. So I try to beat that. So I don't really look into who else is there for the second place or the third place. I think it's not really the right approach. Although initially, when I started out to solve Rubik's cubes, I wanted to go for the prize money. I wanted to go for the first place. So I was only looking for who else could beat me, logically. But I don't do that. I mean, since 2013, 2014, I have not done that. And I think it's also good because I've been aiming for world record since I started cubing, and I've still not been able to do that. I'm so useless that way. So I think this approach is good enough for me. There are still very fast cubers right now. Currently, there are other cubers also coming up from India only. I think it is going to give me a lot of competition, but let's see.
And you talk about like aiming for the world record since the beginning. So what is your opinion about the world record right now? Like, are you actively pursuing it, or is it like still the same that you are just focused on beating yourself? Like every time you want to beat the older version of you.
So normally what I do is I have two kinds of goals. One is me trying to beat my own record, and the second one is me trying to beat some barrier. So all these barriers are mental only, they are not like actual barriers. So right now my average is 10.2. So I would like to break the 10-second barrier. Although if I beat the 10.2 barrier itself, I'll be happy. But if I beat the 10-second barrier and be sub 10, it's some kind of hallmark for cubing. At least for Indian cubing. So I would try to beat that. World record is obviously there, but the one thing that I've realized while breaking records is that if you don't think about it, it happens very naturally. But if you start thinking about it as another barrier, it becomes very, very hard.
Yeah, I think it's in every skill. If you try to like think about it too much, you will completely mess it up. You will completely mess it up. If you just go with the flow
Totally.
and really trust the subconscious and the practice that have you already put in, I think it brings like much better results.
True, true, very true, very true.
And also like I started back in 2012 like early, and I attended my first competition in 2013, and you were already there, and you're already like in the small community, you're already there, like everybody knew you because you are like beating records and like winning competitions. And after a decade, like it's been like 10 years, like you started in 2011.
You make me sound so old.
No, no. No, that was not my intention. I wanted
When
to
I was
ask,
a kid, I saw you. Now I'm grown up, I see you.
that was not my intention. I was trying to ask like what changed in the cubing community, like what changes that you have seen in the way competitions are organized, in which the participants participate, or everything revolves that is like revolving around cubing. So what changed in this tech?
So everything, right? So initially we had only one delegate in India, which means any person anywhere in India, if they have to host a competition, they'll have to contact this person only, and they go through a lot of steps to ensure that this competition is going to go smooth, and they'll have to prove every single one of these things to the delegate, and only after that the delegate submits the proposal to the WCA, and then it gets approved. And this was happening. So very few competitions were there. 2-3 competitions a year itself was a very big thing. In 2011 there were 2 competitions. 2012 there were 3, I think. So there were hardly any competitions, and you had to travel a lot of times for in a year. It wasn't happening anywhere in your vicinity. But right now, since we have more delegates, and we have delegates from east, west, north and south, so there are more competitions. And earlier records were beatable. You could go to a competition and you can expect a record to be broken, and you would kind of know that this is going to be broken, except for 3x3, because that was very luck based. But apart from that, every single one of the events you could predict this is going to happen. So people were very excited to come to a competition and watch all these records being broken, and they were very happy to enjoy with the community. But right now, since the records are very hard to beat, and for every single event there is at least 3 to 4 people who are world class at that event, there is more competition. There are more cheap comments passed. There is more some kind of rivalry going on, Cold War. That keeps happening, which is not an ideal scenario, but as the sport evolves, that always happens. And these people who are competing are also not very mature. If they are over 18, you can expect them to be a little more mature. These are mostly kids who are 12, 13 and extremely talented, very high IQ. They grab things like in an instant. If it takes me three weeks to learn a particular method or a particular algorithm, it takes them 2 days to learn. So it's much easier, and they also keep competing with their classmates, which means that that learning part keeps happening every single day. They don't waste time, and they always have a lot of time to invest in this. So that wasn't happening earlier. The average age for cubing was kind of around 15, 16, and most of these people were also from IIT, because they had competitions happening in their institute. They would like to be the star of the institute, so that was constantly happening, and the average age was also high, and these people are also very mature. And there was a little gatekeeping also. They wanted to ensure that cubers who are going to mingle with them were also of a particular stature. So that was always there. Right now, these people are very open to anyone. If I want to join, practice with cubers who are 11, 12 years old, they would always invite me. It's not like there is any kind of rivalry, gatekeeping going on. So that is also a good thing going on. There's a stark difference, but I think it's evolving that way.
And I think like as you said that before that, like before you can easily break records like innocently, even you don't know. But now like now you have to like really aim
I think I should have chosen my words better.
No, I mean, so basically I was talking to like other cuber, and he also told me like a similar kind of story, and that was only possible back then. And since I was attending competitions at that point of time, so I knew like somebody like randomly, and when I talked to that person, he's like, I was not really expecting that, because the records were
That
like
was also because, many people were reluctant to change from their actual method. So there are very few people trying to experiment and learn new things. For example, 2x2, many people were still using Ortega, which is like kind of like a beginner intermediate, method. And if you want an advanced method, you should go to CLL or EG. But that wasn't happening much. And the problem was that time cubing competitions didn't have a lot of events. If at all there is a competition once in a year or twice in a year, they would only have 3x3. The maximum that they can go to is 2x2 plus one-handed.
Pyraminx.
Apart from that, Pyraminx. Probably. Pyraminx was also a little rare that time. So in 2012 only it started picking up after there were people from Hyderabad who were very good at it, and then they started coming in. And then people from Tamil Nadu also started coming, and they started breaking these records. So they started having it much more often in these places alone. Like Tamil Nadu, and if at all there is one in Tamil Nadu or Andhra, there will be Pyraminx. If at all it's in other places, they might not have Pyraminx. And if at all they have, then these people from Tamil Nadu and Hyderabad will travel all the way to that place, and then they'll go compete. So the competitions had fewer events, and if at all it's an event like blindfolded or solving with feet. Solving with feet happened first time in 2014 or 15, I think. Before that it had happened in 2009. So in 5 years, a lot of people would have gotten faster, but they couldn't have a platform where they can break these records. So it was much easier to break. You can see these people, the more competitions they attend, the more events they break. And the same thing happened with FMC also.
And I think there were a lot of less resources on the internet. And also, like, once you attend a competition and you see somebody solving a 3x3, maybe like I was averaging around 30 seconds at that time, and I was really good in the Pyraminx. In according to that time, I was like averaging 9 seconds. But when I saw like somebody solving in 4 seconds, so I saw that possibility that it is possible. So I think that also plays a major role in terms of what you are aiming for. Once you see a person, as you said, that you saw a person solving OH that you want to beat, so it just suddenly opens that possibility. Okay, that is possible. So I want to like maybe ask that person, or maybe figure out from my own perspective. So I think I think that was really difficult, and because the competitions were less and the community was not really connected as much as that now we are. And the biggest problem was getting new cubes. It was just a task
Oh
in
God,
it.
that was horrible.
It was just a task in itself that you have to plan it out. Like, okay, this is done, this is done, this is.
You'll have to run a yearly schedule. Okay, this month I will probably be ordering. I will get it by the end of the year, and I can compete next year.
I mean,
so that was the reason there was a Facebook group created, Speed Cubing India Unlimited. Shout out to this person, Akshay Rao.
Akshay Rao,
So
yes, definitely.
He created this group to for the cubers to be able to network better with the other cubers, and all the averages were posted, and that time people used to post some kind of videos. I learned some of my finger tricks from a person named Sumit Sarkar, who was from IIT Kanpur. So because my Japanese finger tricks were still not very evolved, and I couldn't figure out how exactly to do certain algorithms, and I watched his video, I slowed it down, and then I eventually figured it out. So all these things started coming up, and he used to do all these big cube orders. He was working part-time with Lighttake, I think. Lighttake was a Chinese website which could sell Rubik's cubes in bulk, and he was ordering in bulk for all the Indian cubers. So you make an order in a particular Facebook sheet, and then he will make the entire order, and it will come after 1 or 2 months, and you don't have to pay shipping. That was the coolest thing that time. Right now now that we have Cube Lelo, people take it for granted. All cubing shipping and all, they take it for granted.
And you can pay you can pay through your card. You don't have to go to the bank and do NEFT.
Exactly. Oh God. NEFT, DD, all these things you'll have to do to a particular bank account. It was very painful back then. And to get a particular cube, it was also hard. And if you get a cube that has some kind of manufacturing defect, then you're gone. For the entire year, you'll have to go. You can't return it also because it's in China, and then you'll have other issues also. Then whatever money you invested in this is also gone. Time invested is also gone. You hoping for a very good cube for 3 months is also gone. That hope also shatters. So it was much harder. And ever since we started having our own store, SCMU was the first cubing store that was there in India, and then there were other stores that were set up, and I met JJ and Nitesh also in a cubing competition, and later they had opened up a store. They had sponsored a particular event, and then I came to know about them, and then they were giving out gifts, and that time I came to know about these two, and I met them. So ever since then they have been sponsoring small events. Then they started sponsoring bigger events like nationals, and then they started sponsoring athletes who are really good cubers. I was sponsored by Cube Lelo in 2015. I went to Malaysia to represent India, and I won a lot of events. Hari Anirudh also came. He was another blindfolded champion. He also came. He also stood third in blindfold. So the boundaries were expanding that time. So Cube Lelo and all the Cube stores, they definitely deserve a huge credit in expanding this territory of cubing and making it easier for people to order. Right now, I think of purchasing a particular cube. I don't have to think twice. I just go to the website, make an order, pay immediately, or cash on delivery. People find it so easy.
Yeah,
it was much harder back then. Yeah, definitely.
And I think the earlier the SCMU stores and those guys were trying their best, but everybody, because of like they cannot do it full time. There were a lot of stores that come and go, because I don't know for what the reason, but because Cube Lelo is like kind of all in, that's their like main job revolving around cubing. So I think they have like put us like a lot forward in a lot of terms, and maybe in connectivity, like organizing these events, and also online events in this pandemic, and sponsoring things. So I think they really like give us I would say a concretized structure for the longer run. Like now it's easy. Now it's easy for us to
although
grow.
with the recent GST rules and other barriers, I think it's actually becoming difficult. But yes, it's become much easier. Back when SCMU used to be there, Akshay Rao was still doing the same that he used to do with the cube order purchases. So he used to he used to make orders at specific times, get it from Light Take, and then sell it to cubers. So even that process was also slow. It was not as fast, but it was still faster than posting it on a Facebook sheet and then taking it. Exactly. And right now the number of cubers are also huge, which means you can count on them to stock a particular purchase. But you couldn't do that back then. If you wanted 3 Pyraminxes, even if you order 4, the 4th might not be sold because people wouldn't know much about it. There would be 3 very good cubers, and the 4th one wouldn't know that this brand is costing so much because it has this particular feature. Right now everything is accessible, and there were very few people on the forum also. So I didn't know about the Speech Solving Forum. Speech Solving Forum is the prime place where you can find the world cubers discussing all new ideas, new cubes, new methods, new processes. But I didn't know much about it even after 1-2 years after I started. So I didn't know much about it till 2013, 2014. And then after I started breaking records, and there was some very big thread about Indian cubing being very slow, and people have not picked up so much since Burnett era. So 2012-13 was when I got introduced after someone made a post on Speech Solving Forum about Indian cubers being very slow. So he said after the Burnett era, there has been no one who has achieved any world-class standards for any event. 2x2 is slow, 3x3 is slow, 100 is slow, everything is slow. So I think you guys are very slow, but what is the reason? So people took it very personal. Obviously, he was just pointing out the facts. He said, you have been around for a very long time, you have been having competitions, but no one is, world class till now. So then people started getting very serious about it. I think in 3-4 competitions, I broke the Asian record. There was another person who broke the 2x2 single. There was another person who got a very good sub-10 single, Dharmesh Shahu.
Yeah.
And then people started getting very, very fast, quickly, very fast. And there was a feat event which happened, and Daniel James, who is the current WCA delegate. So he was 9th or 12th in the world. So people started getting very fast suddenly. It was more about time, right? I mean, we had to have events to break records and prove ourselves. It was not happening very much. So people are also very nervous back then.
Even if the guy just pointed out the facts, we took it very seriously.
As every Indian should take it.
And I think it's a good thing. Like people took it seriously and see like where we are right now.
Yeah, I think it improved a lot back then. And someone had pointed out immediately after my Asian record. They said, should this thread still exist? And then they closed down the thread. So a lot of things happened that time. It was fun, but yes, but naturally, frankly speaking, it was actually very slow back then. People were still breaking, but they were very nervous because we didn't get to have these scenarios very often. In US, competitions were happening left, right and center, so they could explore, they could see what works with them, what doesn't work with them. We go to a competition, everything is new for us. We had a timer, but display was new for us. We had tables, but crowds standing very close to us was new for us. Also, there are regulations that say, people should stand certain meters away from the solving station, but that was not happening back then. It used to happen in college classrooms, and college classrooms you can't have a lot of space, and people were flocking because everyone found it very fascinating that people are able to solve it so fast. So everyone used to flock, and there wasn't much time to think. You always are nervous. Every single event you are nervous because everyone is watching you. Media will cover it every single time. The following day you can always expect it to be covered in some kind of media. So everyone was nervous naturally, and there was huge prize money for every single event, for every single cultural fest, because it used to happen very remotely in IITs, NITs. So they had huge prize money allocated to all these cubing competitions. So you had to win that prize money, and all these things are there. Right now we have sponsors, which means these people help us travel. These people help us get accustomed to places. There is some kind of discounts provided to big athletes, which means they get to access cubes much earlier. They don't have to lose their entire wallet to get a particular cube. That wasn't happening back then.
Early access, huh?
Oh god, back then I sound so old.
So basically, I don't remember like ordering from China, like the group. I don't know that existed, but I knew there was a time when I used to tell one of my friend, and he used to order on SCMU. Then the SCMU sent him. Then he said, "Oh."
Yeah, they also had certain pin codes they could cover because they were all college students. He was still pursuing. Akshay Rao was still pursuing his masters, and he was organizing this by the side.
I was like, I will lose my motivation. I need my cubes.
Can totally relate to it.
And cubing has helped you in other areas of your life, and if yes, how?
It has helped me in wide variety of occasions. So first of all, I would say it has helped me build some kind of confidence. When you start up cubing and you start going to these competitions and you start placing somewhere, you'll know that you can face any kind of crowd. You can learn how to not be nervous in actual situations that put you under a lot of pressure. And since you start facing media much more often, you'll get comfortable around interviews. So these are very, very subtle skills that you'll develop along the journey, and you'll learn how to unlearn and relearn. If you're learning a particular method, and if you want to jump to a better method, let's say you're starting with beginner's method and you want to jump to Friedrich F12s. So if you have to jump to that, you'll obviously be slower for some point of time, and then you'll get faster. So you'll have to unlearn whatever you had done earlier and then relearn. So all these very subtle things you'll learn, and you can apply it in a lot of places also. So for people who do blindfolded solving, they have very specific memory techniques which are used by a lot of people. You see all these cool TV series, Sherlock and all, where they show Memory Palace. So Memory Palace is actually a form of method of loci, which is you have certain rooms in your mind, and in certain places of those rooms you put a memory and then close it. So that memory will stay as long as you want to, and then unless you open that door and then take that memory out, you can't actually do that, but if you close your mind and then start doing it, unless you do that, that memory will stay in that place. It sounds very fascinating, but it is very fascinating. So you'll get to know, and this way you can memorize any number of things, and people have gotten very, very successful. Akash Rupela, who was that spectacular national record breaker at one point of time, he switched to being a senior delegate. Right now he has switched to memory sports also. So it is very easy for cubers to be very malleable to any kind of new sport, because majority of the new sports will require you to have certain skills and being able to learn certain things at a fast-paced manner. And you can do that if you some kind of basics you have with cubing, you can do that with any other sport also. That is why you see even cubers who are good at any event at the world class, they can actually get very good at other events as well, and they can get very good at other sports, other facets of life as well.
Other skills also, like not really only sports, but other skills also.
Yes, you see a lot of people doing pen spinning, yo-yoing, chess. So all these require a lot of practice, and you being focused, you knowing what to do, executing, experimenting, learning new skills, trying it out. So it's almost the same. And I did my MBA also. After I finished my PhD, I did an MBA. And in that MBA, obviously, this is this is an icebreaker for me every single time. I don't normally try to open this. I I don't normally try to open this up in any interview, because once I open this, people will no longer be interested in knowing what kind of person I am or what other skills I have. They'll only talk about this. So I don't open this up, but when they look at my CV, obviously it's going to be there. And people are mighty impressed by this. And if you can speak about this enough, it's not about you knowing how to solve a Rubik's Cube and then putting it on a CV and then talking about it in an interview. It's not like that. But if you're actually good and you know what kind of skills you have learned, soft skills you have learned from this, how you can execute it in other facets of life, how you can help another organization, then it becomes very useful. So initially I didn't know that, but eventually after I joined an MBA and after I attended a lot of interviews, started working it out in my mind, introspecting, I learned how I can apply some of these skills. I'd also put up a huge, some kind of helping forum for other people who want to pursue MBA or other fill out college applications. And SOP, if they want to mention cubing, they could add a few soft skills that they have learned from cubing. So I'd put up a huge post on that. So MBA also, it had helped me a lot. And it's a face turner also. Like right now, my wife, she was my junior in school, in college. Obviously, she got to know about me through cubing only. If I had performed somewhere brilliantly with music or with sports, she might have heard my name, but still I wouldn't have been this famous. And so it helps you with other things as well. I'm not going to very openly say that.
Matches are not made in heaven, matches are made through cubing.
I'm not going to openly say that you should pursue cubing only for this reason, but it definitely helps.
So I think you get very comfortable with that, acquiring a new skill.
Yeah, and if you see, learning any event or any skill requires the same set of predetermined traits that you need. So if you're going to learn, let's say I'm taking a very, very different tangent. Let's say you're going to learn cricket. Tomorrow you want to start becoming a cricketer. So there is some event you'll have to pick in cubing, and similar to that, there also you'll have to pick some kind of aspect of cricket. Let's say bowling, batting, fielding, whatever, and you have to get really good at it. How do you get good at it? Spend hours and hours of practice. Learn from the best. So you start slowing down someone else's videos, and then eventually you'll have to execute these skills and then see if that works for you. There are certain things that work for other people that might not work for you. So you execute it, and the more you execute, the more you learn more about yourself. So you'll know that this works for me, this works for the other person but doesn't work for me. So I have to try something different. The other person might have better fitness than you. He can reach from point A to point B much faster. So there are other aspects also. So you learn, experiment, and then see if it works for you. Then you again unlearn, and then you learn a new skill, and then you try that again. So it is basically the same for any kind of new thing that you pick up. Yeah, and you just have to be very introspective when you get into any sport or any new skill.
Are you actively pursuing any other hobbies other than cubing?
I currently don't do it, but very recently I was still playing cricket. So I was playing tennis ball cricket. Initially I started out to play for cricket ball, and then I had a lot of injuries. I thought maybe I'll switch to tennis ball. And recently I've attended a lot of tournaments, and then I've been playing tennis ball. And every day in the evening at home, I just practice a little bit of carom. And obviously work keeps me busy. But apart from that, some gymming and just trying to stay fit, running. So I used to run 1500 meters also. So then that also stopped because I was lazy. But then yes, right now I actively do just gymming and a little bit of cricket whenever I could, and work. And cubing. Cubing is obviously there. It's like a constant.
So is it difficult for you to distribute your time among all the things that you do?
Yeah, I mean, initially I was finding it very hard because earlier I used to do a PhD, and it was an integrated program, which means I had to concentrate on studies, also go for an internship, also do my research, also practice cubing, and also do other things around my life, my personal life. So that was also important. I didn't want to be socially awkward and have a zero personal life. So I was trying to manage everything at once. And eventually I figured out, you could have some kind of, it's more about not whiling away time looking at some random videos or some random series. There will be time for that as well, but yeah. And one more thing about any skill that you pick up, I think this is the most underrated and the most underrated thing that you could ever have in any new skill that you pick up. It's sleep. Many people would dismiss this very easily. When they go for a cubing competition also, not many people sleep enough. But sleep is probably the best thing that you could have. Even if you're playing tennis, you need sleep so that the skills that you have learned on that particular day will get soaked in, and your brain will learn how to get better at that particular skill. For that you need sleep. But many people don't realize it. And I don't tell that to people, but right now, after a long time, 11 years of cubing, I'm telling it openly. If you're going for a cubing competition, the more time you spend in your sleep, the better it is. Your confidence dips, and even if you're having coffee, it doesn't really help. So even at cubing competitions, if you find a weird person at the end of a room just taking a nap, it would be me. I would take 20-30 minute naps somewhere at the end of the room, corner of
Oh.
the room. So it really helps. I'm still slow though, but this is something what many people can use. The faster people can use.
Have you missed any competition or event due to your nap?
I've not missed it, but I have taken naps and almost missed an event. I think it was once in nationals only. People woke me up and they said, "You're being called right now." So I had to go execute an event with zero warm up. So that has happened. But yes, you should not be that risky. But you could.
Now I have a set of social media questions, and the first is Kunal and Vijay asked, what is your primary source of motivation to keep on improving and updating your alg base?
Alg based. So the thing is, I just find this fascinating. Ever since I started cubing, I found learning new algorithms very fascinating. Like if there is an opportunity for me to, let's say there is a Seun case, and many of the faster cubers know what a Seun is. It's RU R prime, URU to R prime. And let's say you end up with a Seun case as a beginner, and if you just do the 7 mover, your cube will be solved, but you don't know that. So there is a possibility that you could have done it much faster. So this particular scenario where I could have done it much faster, but I didn't make use of that lucky case or that lucky scenario, that is something that drives me. So I think I come across one case which is very obvious, and I look at it and then I see, oh, this is very easy. I can recognize this in an instant, and I should learn an alg for this so that if at all I get it in the future, I would be able to make use of this lucky scenario. So then I learned 1 or 2 cases in a particular set, and then I realized I finished 8 or 9 of the 12 algs that are there in a set. Might as well learn the other 3. So I end up learning the entire set, and then I move to a next one, and then I see some of those have already been learned. So eventually I keep doing that, and the same thing applies to other events as well. Blindfolded also, Cube also. Any particular event, there will be some kind of scenario where there is a possibility that you could get it much faster. Then I learn it from it.
Abhijit asked how to achieve fluidity.
So I didn't have a lot of speed, frankly speaking. When I started cubing also, I didn't have a lot of speed, and my F12s were also very choppy. So I would do one alg and then stop, one alg and then stop, and then that time the cubes were very bad, which means if you stop even for a second, you're losing out on a lot of a potential good time. So people who were very fast, I observed their solves, and they were very fluid. They were not very fast turning, but they were very, very fluid. So I realized I should start doing this. Initially I used a metronome, but that didn't really help me. So making 1 or 2 moves per metronome beat, that didn't really help me. So I thought maybe I'll have a mental metronome. I'll start doing it, and then slowly getting faster helped me. And I started becoming more fluid. I realized this is the pace I'll have to go to keep being more fluid. So there is a pace that every one of us have to be more fluid, and you just have to figure out what your pace is. If you're not able to be fluid at the pace that you're currently solving, you'll have to slow down probably like 10-20% less, and then you can keep going fluidly. So you just have to figure out your point.
Awesome. How to increase TPS and decrease recognition time?
Recognition time, right now we have a lot of softwares. I'll answer this and then later I'll talk about TPS.
Sure.
Recognition time right now, if you're talking about major cases, F2L, OLL, PLL, the others wouldn't require a lot of recognition. If you think about it, it's mostly the specific subsets that would require recognition. And if you're not able to do it, there are lots of trainers that help you do it. We didn't have it earlier, 2013, 14, 15, but right now there are lots of softwares that help you with it. So you can just go, have a list of cases that you're not very comfortable with, click on, execute. It'll give you a random case. You can apply it on the cube and then try solving it immediately. So your recognition plus execution time gets counted. And eventually you'll also know how fast you can get at that particular recognition, because you'll keep coming across that case very, very often. And it's not like you'll have to wait 1 in 15, 20 sols or 70 sols to get that particular case. So you get much faster with recognition. And about TPS,
And before that, can you recommend some apps or website or tools for recognition?
so you can just go and Google for OLL PLL trainer, but there is one website I would recommend if you want very specific, ALK sets. It is a very, very well built site. It's bestsiteever.ru. Bestsiteever.ru.
Okay.
So this person's website is very, very good for any new case that you learn. And the more and more you practice with this website, the faster you get with recognition.
Yeah. Now TPS.
And about TPS, I'm not really the person you should ask for TPS because my TPS has not been very good. I have always, relied heavily on fluidity. I think if you are fluid enough, you should be able to get very good solves. But if you want TPS, you should probably pause less, which is almost the same as fluidity. So just pause less. If you're solving a particular case, ensure your fingers execute that case and your brain tracks the next step. So that way you will have no pauses in between. It's much easier than said.
Will we be seeing you at the World Championship whenever it happens?
So the next World Championship likely is supposed to happen at the end of this year, 2021 December, and I'm planning to go for it. But let's see. So this has been very evasive. So I've always wanted to have either a world record or a World Championship or both. And the last World Championship I competed in, I was not in a very good state to actually, compete. I was starving most of the time. I was on a very good budget. I was in college, so I was on a budget. The entire trip was on a budget. And when I went there also, I had a very high fever. And I was hoping I wouldn't get quarantined or, caught by someone because I was in another country. And that time there were a lot of nasty infections going on. I was in Paris that time. So I was hoping someone wouldn't catch me and then, ask me for my body temperature. So I went to a pharmacy, got I diagnosed myself, took medications. And I was in a very, very bad state, 103 degrees fever, competing in a world championship. It's not very good. And if you see the world championship room, it's normally very, very cold. It's extremely cold so that, people from across the world could be very comfortable there. So it was very cold also. I was not very happy. My first round was kind of okayish. And second round I stood 20th. And I was qualified as the last person for the final. And in the final I had absolutely no pressure because I knew that I wouldn't win. I had a lot of other issues going on with my fever and everything else. I thought I wouldn't win, so I was under no pressure, but people were under a lot of pressure because of media presence and all. And I came fourth. So I was hoping I would get the bronze, and everyone was talking about how I actually won the bronze. And then there was another last minute entry that was done on the page. And then the last minute entry came third and I came fourth. I missed the bronze by 0.05 seconds. So it has been very evasive. I've always wanted a world record or a world championship title, but it has always been evasive. So I'm still chasing for these. Let's hope I get it. Asian championship medal I wanted. I was almost there for getting a gold, but in the finals I dropped the cube and then missed it. But I still got the bronze, so at least that is fine. Now it's the world championship time. Yeah, let's see.
Now, what was your experience of Red Bull Championship?
It was brilliantly organized. I think that is probably the way cubing has to be organized in any particular time. If WCA can step. So with everything, right? With travel, coordination and wherever stay was organized. So all cubers were put in the same hotel so that, they get to practice, they get to meet other people across the world. And these rooms were also very good. The food was also provided. And the venue was also very, very good. And they had a lot of media. They knew how to publicize this event. So it was put up, a lot of posters about the Rubik's Cube World Championship had been put up at a lot of places in Moscow. Many people also knew about it. When we landed in the airport, there were other people who knew about the, they were not even cubers, but they knew about the World Championship happening. They said, we saw this board, that billboard, and we saw this happening. So all these things. So the more people get to know about the sport, the better the sport gets. Cricket is only good here. It's actually better than hockey in India, more popular than hockey because many people know about cricket. And very few people, yeah, almost everyone. And if India wins a particular series, let's say the India-Australia series, everyone gets to know about it because
they'll go crazy.
Yeah. It's only because of the popularity of the sport and because everyone follows it. So once that happens, even with chess, I'm talking about chess also. Like we had the World Championship organized in India, if you remember, Vishwanathan Anand versus Magnus Carlsen happening in Chennai. A lot of people were following it, frankly speaking, and it was happening in a a closed room scenario. The chief minister of the then chief minister of Tamil Nadu was organizing it. So imagine a chief minister organizing a particular sport. Obviously, everyone is going to watch it. So that is how, and if you compare the skills, they are almost very same. Chess and cubing, it's very same. And with cubing, there is more, dexterity that you would need, and there is less dexterity that you would need with chess. So I think this sport could grow leaps and bounds. So there was a funny thing that happened also in 2017. Whatever you say is exactly true. I hit a very big barrier in 2017 and I couldn't improve any further in any of the events. I was actually thinking maybe I should give cubing some time, some off time. And that is when I met a chess champion. So the chess champion was someone in the same institute as Vishwanathan Anand earlier. So Naren Ramesh, who is also another cuber, his father was the chess champion.
Yeah.
His father was a chess champion, and I spoke with him, and I spoke to him about nerves, and I spoke to him about me not able to break barriers, and me being stagnant, and life not going very smooth in regards of cubing and handling a lot of things. So then he gave me a few tips to break these barriers, and one competition later I broke the national record, and then few competitions later I broke the Asian record. So I think the approach is almost the same. He says Magnus Carlsen, he doesn't think about if at all he makes a bad move, he doesn't think about any of the moves he has done before that. So he just looks at it like a fresh board.
Exactly.
Even if he has done a mistake, that is what makes him very good at end games. And many people do not do that. So they carry a lot of arrears from
baggage,
earlier, the previous moves. Exactly. So that the same thing applies to cubing also. Even if you are in the middle of a, let's say, 3x3 solve and you have messed up somewhere in the cross, if you are very fluid and you don't think about the cross being very bad or the scramble being very bad, and you just keep doing what you're supposed to do, you're going to get a decent time, at least not the very best of time. And if you get a skip, obviously you're going to get a very good solve. It also helps if you actually practice it with that mindset. If you're practicing at home instead of listening to music and then being constantly distracted, which is not going to happen in a cubing competition. Everyone is going to look at you. There's going to be a pin drop silence. So if you start practicing in those scenarios, and if you're cold, then switch on your AC and then start practicing. If you're going to be nervous when you do a particular step or a particular algorithm or a particular method, then start practicing with that method, imagining that you're in that particular scenario. And if it's top 3, then ask someone right next to you to start solving. Let them finish and then you start solving, and then see if this works for you. So you can just experiment at home also, so that nothing is new to you. I think Max Park also does the same. He has competition simulations that happen at home. So he imagines that he is in a particular. So he also practices in average of 5s. So he does an average of 5, then takes a break, and then does another average of 5. Always practice with stack mat. So these are small things we can do at home to get rid of all these competition nerves. Yeah, you can't keep complaining. And at one point of time, I had also realized. So if I go to a particular competition and the competition is very cold, I'm from the south of India, which means I'm going to be used to more heat than cold. So if I go to competitions, obviously I can't expect them to switch off the ACs or have everything hot. So I had to get used to it. It was very hard. Even right now I'm not 100% used to it, but I know how to survive. If at all it is there, I know how to survive, because I had been to bigger competitions like the World Championships, where obviously everything is going to be cold and I can't complain over there. So I started getting used to it and then figuring out things to do. So I got a electric heater, do some nonsense and then keep yourself warm.
Awesome. So now I have a rapid fire round for you. So you don't think about it. Should we go?
Yes.
Best competition.
Amrita 2012.
Favorite cuber.
Akash Ropela.
Favorite cricketer.
Glenn McGrath.
Happiest moment of your life.
First ASR.
Choose between these two. Idlis or cubing.
Cubing.
If you had to eat one thing for every meal going forward, what would you eat?
Oh God, this is hard. Oats probably.
If you could spend a day in someone else's shoe, who would they be?
No one. Mine.
Nice. I love that. And what is the thing that you're most afraid of?
That my skills would become obsolete tomorrow, or whatever I've learned before would go obsolete.
Oh, that is an intense one. So I discovered your TED Talk while I was researching you. So could you talk about that? How you got the opportunity and how was it?
I was approached by a team, the organizing team, and they asked me if I could speak a little
Mm-hmm.
about cubing and how it has impacted life. And
Mm-hmm.
dream, dare, and do was their theme. So they said if you could connect it with this, it'll be nice. So I took it
Mm-hmm.
up. One of those organizers was also a cuber. So Shakti
Oh.
Prasad was his name. So he wanted me to be part of this and share my thoughts on cubing and life and in general about how it has helped me and
Mm-hmm.
it will help people
Mm-hmm.
to just spread more awareness. So I took it up and then I started preparing. I thought I'll include a little bit of demonstration because many people might not know about the Rubik's cube. So I thought I'll include a little demonstration. I also did a blindfolded solve. I mean, I was happy I
Oh.
executed it.
Sh-
It took a lot of time to memorize.
Showstopper.
Showstopper.
I want to talk about online competitions and especially the CSUL. So, what was your experience and what what role do you think they played in this pandemic?
I think online competitions are a great thing because during this pandemic, now that we don't get to, go to these competitions and compete,
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll have to have that spark going, right? To practice and to prove ourselves and, to break records. And whatever we have learned in the past, we'll have to experiment it in some event or the other, right? Like I mentioned earlier. And these online competitions are a very, very good platform because you don't really lose out on the competitive nature that you have, and you also get to compete somewhere and see how your skills are fared in a particular period of time. So I think Cublelo is doing a great job also with this, having Discord, and then I think they have evolved a lot also with this. They have learned a lot of things, and yeah, I think we are in a very good place right now. I think once we start having competitions going on around the world, most of us who have competed in all these online competitions, I don't think we would see a lot of change. I think it would feel like yesterday, competing yesterday. But the others who have not, they will find it a little hard. The nervousness will still be there. Even Felix had mentioned when the world opened and they started having competitions. Even he was very nervous, and he has been competing for over 10 years now. So that is going to happen for people who have not competed very often. So I think this is a very great platform. If at all someone hasn't competed yet, I think you should go and compete in these online competitions.
Definitely, and I also think in the pandemic we just like, even if the competition we are not getting that feeling that we used to get in an offline competition, but still we were connected in some way or the
Yeah,
other.
that is also true.
Awesome. I mean, it's been such an amazing conversation, and I know we could have gone. We could have discussed a lot of topics, and we had a lot of untapped things that we wanted to discuss because of time. So maybe part two. Who knows? But Bhargav, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me again. It was lovely. I had a great time here.